is General Hugh Shelton, who became the 14th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff on October 1, 1997, and served two-year terms as the principal military advisor to Presidents Clinton and Bush. General Shelton has been honored with the Congressional Gold Medal, as well as 4 Defense Distinguished Service Medals, 2 Army Distinguished Service Medals, the Legion of Merit, the Bronze Star Medal for Valor, and the Purple Heart. In 2001, he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. General Shelton.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you very much. Well, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your very warm reception. To those of you in Camp Ashraf, greetings. Salam alaikum. 65 days and counting. It is hard to believe that over 10 months ago, I stood here in front of you and some of your distinguished colleagues and spoke of the need, the urgency to delist the MEK from the Foreign Terrorist Organization list. It was a no-brainer decision then, and it is a no-brainer decision today. Yet, our lethargic State Department has not made the decision, even as those in Camp Ashraf today face a very dangerous and potentially life-threatening situation. From who? From the Iranian-controlled Maliki government in Iraq. Let's take a minute this morning to review the facts. Fact number 1, the current terrorist-exporting Iranian regime, the government, has trouble even coming up with allegations that the MEK is a terrorist organization. They refer back to a 1979 takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. And then, of course, they recently tried to blame the attack on the Saudi ambassador here that was mentioned by the ambassador against the MEK. Tried to say it was MEK, a fact that was repeatedly denied by our own State Department. Fact number 2, the DC Court of Appeals told the State Department over 15 months ago that they had broken the law by placing the MEK on the Foreign Terrorist Organization list without due process, and they told them to produce the evidence. Yet to date, the State Department has produced 0 evidence. Why? Because there is 0 evidence to produce. That's why. Fact, the State Department has failed, and the word failed in this town is a big word, but they have failed to comply with the DC Court of Appeals. Now, what kind of a department or what kind of a government do we have that will not even comply with a court ruling? Fact, the MEK is not a cult, as the current Iranian regime has tried to paint it as, in order to make us feel that the MEK is not an organization that can be trusted to lead the way toward change that the Iranian people themselves so richly deserve and that would benefit from. Fact, over 30 senior former officials in the government here, bipartisan, non-parochial, have joined together to publicly support removing the MEK from the FTO list. These are individuals of great integrity, individuals just like you have on the dais this morning. In that distinguished group, you've got a former Attorney General, Mo Casey. You've got the former Director of the FBI, good friend Louis Freeh. You've got Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Peter Pace. You've got the former Ambassador for Counterterrorism in the State Department, Ambassador Dale Daly, that's here this morning. And of course, all those on the dais here today. These are individuals of great integrity. They're individuals of great ethics. There are individuals that you couldn't buy their support if you tried, unless they firmly believed that it was the right thing to do. And that is why each of them do it. That is why they have fought so hard, and I would even say valiantly in many cases, to try to make sure that the MEK is taken off the list, not tomorrow, but today. 65 days and counting. We in the U.S. disarmed the residents of Camp Ashraf in 2003 in exchange for guaranteeing them protection under the Fourth Geneva Protocol. That has not changed, although we have turned the area that the Camp Ashraf is located in over to the Iraqi government. We still maintain responsibility for providing that protection. Fact, in April of this year, we all stood by, U.S. stood by, as the Maliki forces entered the camp and killed 34 residents while injuring scores of others, hundreds of others. And that was in spite of our promise, in spite of our commitment, and in spite of having our military forces that were close by at the time. Fact, the U.S. continues to provide the Iraqi government with billions of dollars in aid each year. And to say that we don't have the means to influence the Iraqi government because we don't have troops there anymore is an outright lie. We have means to influence. We have many tools in our national kit bag, if you will. We've got diplomatic, political, military, informational, and yes, economic. And the fact is, we should be using our economic tool to try to ensure that we guarantee protection for those in Camp Ashraf. If we don't, we need to stop pouring billions of dollars in aid each year into a rat hole if we don't have any influence whatsoever. We have a very powerful tool in this nation, our economic tool. We have to have the political and diplomatic courage to use that tool. That means that we have to have action from both Secretary of State as well as ultimately from President Obama. Fact, the Iranian government is the most dangerous terrorist exporting nation in the world today. I don't think anyone would deny that. Even the most liberal personnel around would have to tell you that that's a true statement. We know, if Director Free were here, he could testify to the fact they were responsible for the Khobar Tower bombing that killed a number of Americans. And most recently, bringing it right up to speed, trying to blow up the Saudi ambassador right here in our nation's capital, right under the State Department's nose. Fact, the Secretary of Defense, Secretary Panetta, has recently spoken out, warning the Iranians about their involvement in military operations around the world. Fact, we've got a bipartisan congressional resolution that has gone to the Secretary of State, encouraging her to remove the MEK from the FTO list. That's very significant because we all know how hard it is to get anything that is bipartisan, non-parochial, if you will, in this town passed, and it went over. Fact, Mrs. Rajavi, the charismatic and fearless leader of and president-elect of the MEK, has a 10-point program that would ensure that the people of Iran would enjoy the same rights, privileges, and freedoms that other democratic, loving nations around the globe experience. But in order for that to be effective, it has to be implemented. And that means that we need a change. That means that the Iranian people need a change in the theocratic, autocratic regime, the regime of tyranny, I'll call it, that they have to live under in Iran today. Fact, the MEK is not asking for resources. All they're asking for is an acknowledgement that they are a group that believes in freedom for the Iranian people, and that they could be counted on as an ally in the fight against terrorism and against the tyranny that Iran represents around the globe today. You know, these are clearly undeniable facts that surround the MEK and the requirement to delist. I hope that Secretary Clinton has been advised by her obviously bureaucratic staff of the urgency of the matter, that they fully understand that what's in front of them today. And as the Iranian-controlled Maliki forces prepare and have gathered outside of Camp Ashraf, sure, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has granted the status of political asylum seekers to the residents of Camp Ashraf, and that's the first step. But the Secretary General himself has not provided full-time monitoring forces to station at the camp. It is absolutely essential that we have these observers placed on the ground in order to ensure that they can report on what the activities are there and give the rest of the world a chance to react. It is absolutely necessary if we are going to protect the disarmed, innocent civilians that reside in Camp Ashraf today. We have a tool to ensure that that happens as well. We have considerable influence in the United Nations, and we have tools that are available to us. They're called diplomatic and economic tools. But we need to use that economic tool for sure to make sure that this action takes place. And again, that takes political courage. It starts with the Secretary of State, but ultimately it boils down to President Obama. Today, we are indeed at a critical juncture for Camp Ashraf. What actions are required? From my standpoint, first and foremost, the State Department needs to move without delay to delist the MEK. Remember, it was this listing that the Iraqi government itself used against our State Department when they started to argue against the actions that they had taken back in April. We ourselves had declared the MEK as a terrorist organization. We need to take away that label, and we need to do it today. Again, for the Secretary of State and for President Obama, we need to use our economic tool again to demand that we have a permanent, full-time monitoring force in place at Camp Ashraf, a UN force, to protect the Ashraf residents until the final disposition can be made for their future. We need to notify, and I don't say request, we need to notify Maliki that Ashraf cannot be closed until the UNHCR has completed its work on behalf of the Ashraf residents. We need to tell Maliki and the Iranian government to stop interfering with the process. We all know that they've been involved with this process on both sides, and they need to take their hands off of it and let the UN do its work. For Secretary Clinton and President Obama, I would say, don't be afraid to use this great economic tool that we've got in our kit bag and demand that the Maliki government honor our commitment to protect the residents of Ashraf, even in the face of the Iranian resistance that the Maliki government is facing. And above all, I'd say remember that we have a very narrow window, 65 days and counting, to accomplish these actions. Thank you very much.